All right, Penn State fans, you know what time it is. Blue White Breakdown, Bob Flounders, Dave Jones. First week of December in the books, Dave. A lot to talk about. Where would you like to start, my man?
Bob, who am I? Jim Harbaugh. No.
I was either going to see him or Bo Pelini. Yeah.
Did you see the screenshot I got of him?
I didn't, but I saw the thing on social media about
Yeah.
him. He's just so. I don't even know how to describe him. He's indescribable. I really would say.
He's what our old boss Nick Horvath called Ford Chapman. He said he's on the train line, but he has his own set of tracks.
I just love the fact that that's not rehearsed. That's just him. You know what I mean? He just is.
I like that about him.
Yeah.
But he's kind of a. How about Mozzie Smith? Did you hear about that?
The guns, yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was right before the Penn State game too.
Yeah, it was okay. It was fine.
Yeah.
Michigan is renowned. Well, all the different schools in the major schools in the East have Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Michigan. Name one that hasn't made excuses and rationalized for some sort of reprehensible behavior. They all have.
David, did anything surprise you? Anything? What surprised you the most about championship weekend? Would you say?
I'll tell you what didn't surprise me is Utah kicking USC's ass. And did you watch that game? And did you watch the 43-42 game earlier this season?
I actually saw more of the first game because I think Penn State was on the road, and I was watching. I was doing some work, and that game was on really late, and it was entertaining. Mm-hmm. I thought USC had that game won, and Utah came back and beat them.
And which one are you talking? Yeah,
the first game.
And so you didn't see the second game.
I didn't really. Friday nights. I'm not. I have a free run. I'm probably not going to stay in and watch a
game. Why don't you just say what you do on Friday nights? No, you don't have to.
That's what I'm doing, Dave. Watching USC Utah was not one, but it did surprise me. I watched the highlights. I know Caleb Williams got hurt. USC's defense is that was disgusting how badly they play defense.
It's the Pac-12. And when people tell me about the Pac-12's very underrated, I've been watching this football. It's not garbage. Football anymore. Stanford isn't Stanford. Stanford
it's like flag football.
Huh?
It's like flag football.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's like a lowercase Big 12. And Big 12 actually was pretty good this year. But it's not football. I mean, Stanford is no longer Stanford,
right?
Because they can't get transfers in. I mean, David Shaw finally threw up his hands, and he can't make it work anymore.
Yeah.
They can't get living in the transfer portal. You have to be able to get guys in from general studies programs and get their credits transferable, or they're not coming in, and Stanford won't do that. And so they are just like Cal now. I mean, they're all it's a candy ass league. It really is. And it is. And who would you compare? You don't watch enough Pac-12 to know,
or not? I'm still
you don't watch enough Pac-12 to know, or what?
No, but what I was going to ask you, Dave, I'm not trying to. I want you to finish your point, but so do you feel like Utah is like that, or do you feel like Utah's the best version?
That's what I was getting to. They're the only team in that league. UCLA, to a point, is pretty physical. They can be, at least. And then after that, it's just a succession of these Arizona State. Oregon State's a pretty good team. At least they're tough under Jonathan Smith, but they just don't have any players.
Yeah.
Outside of that, man, I mean, it's this succession of Arizona States and Arizonas and Cals, and it's all the same flinging around. It's flag football. You're right. It's flag football. And Utah plays real football. And you cannot go up against Utah thinking you're going to have an easy way out, because under Kyle Whittingham, they've done. They're like Wisconsin when they were good. That's who I compared them to. That 2016 Wisconsin team that Penn State needed every ounce of fuel to get through in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
That's what they're in for in Pasadena.
I'm thrilled though. I'm glad you didn't include Utah in the candy ass umbrella, because I just feel
they're
like
the opposite.
Okay, good. That's a good starting point for this podcast. I think it might be the best bowl game, including the semifinals. How about that?
Really?
Yeah.
So you're a little more bullish about going out there than you were before, because last time I talked to you, you were
because you know what,
very
Dave,
down in the mouth about going to the Rose Bowl.
Well, it's not so much the game itself. The game itself is usually spectacular. It's just getting out there and then immediately pivoting and coming back in like 60 hours. It kind of, you're not there very long because you got to spend a lot of time traveling. It's not like you can stay out there too much longer. But my worry was that if it was a team from the Pac-12, say it was Washington or whoever, that Penn State would just have been able to physically in the second half take over the game, and they wouldn't really need a lot of plays maybe in their passing game. They could just physically want it more and just do that to a Pac-12 team.
And this is not going to be that, let me tell you,
right.
because that's what this team does to other teams. What I wrote, in case anyone who didn't read it,
I read it. I liked it.
Is they better strap it on, man, because and bowl games have become more and more known for who's not there rather than who is, and who doesn't really want to be there rather than who does. Right. And I'm telling you, Utah under Kyle Whittingham, if you don't know anything about Kyle Whittingham, he was Urban Meyer's DC back in the mid-aughts when Urban Meyer was the head coach. People forget this. Urban Meyer was the head coach at Utah after he came in from Bowling Green. And such that he is, I wouldn't advocate him as a human being or anything, but he's a really good football coach. And he kind of revolutionized that program in a very short period of time.
Alex Smith.
Huh?
He had Alex Smith, right? And then they beat.
Yeah, and after that, he had a guy named, do you remember the 2008 team under Whittingham? That was the first team that really
I was talking about Urban Meyer they whipped up on Pitt in that bowl game.
Yeah. And then they were they were in that game against they were in one of the New Year's Six games, and then Urban left for Florida, and Kyle Whittingham took over in 2005, and they kind of hit a rocky stretch there, and then he got it going. He got his feet under him. And the 2008 team, nobody remembers this, but they had a kid named Brian Johnson.
I remember him,
who was such a resourceful, savvy quarterback. And they went into the Sugar Bowl and beat Alabama on their home turf, and they were 13-0 that year, ended up number 2 in the nation. And Kyle Whittingham really hasn't looked back since. They had a little hiccup after they got Pac-12 membership, which I think was 2011. And so then they had a little trouble in 2012, 2013, but they was right back on track. And he's been winning 9, 10, 11 games almost every year since then. These guys are going to be a really tough out. And now they've got a quarterback. See, usually, other than Brian Johnson and Alex Smith, they've had another similarity to Wisconsin is they've had these widgets at quarterback. They haven't really had great quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. And Cameron Rising is another level above what they usually have. He was not only a 4-star recruit out of Ventura, California. He looks like a biker gang president. He's got
you're just full of some descriptors today. I love it.
He's got the long, stringy black hair and the kind of forbidding goatee, and just he's very soft spoken, very Cali, cool. But he is a baller. He kind of makes plays the way he's not the same style of quarterback as Trace McSorley, but he makes plays out of nowhere like Trace McSorley did. And he is their unquestioned leader, their captain, and he's emblematic of who they are. And he was against USC, because when Caleb Williams strained his hamstring there early in the second quarter, USC was ahead 17-3 and looked like they were going to go in for 24-3. And I'm thinking, Nah, just just wait, because Utah's tougher, and they will out tough you in the second half. And once they got USC to submit, they just blitzed them. I think it was 33-0 at one stretch late in the game. 47-24 was the final, going away Utah.
Dave, give me your thoughts on the 4 teams in the playoffs, and what your initial read is on both semifinals. What's your big key to both semifinals? I
want to hear yours, actually, because I know what mine is, and I'm tired of hearing myself talk. So you go ahead. I'm curious, and then I'll tell you what mine is.
I just don't think Ohio State's defense is going to be able. Everyone just, the one thing about the Georgia offense is it's a little bit more dangerous than people realize, I think, this year. And I don't know the way that Ohio State's playing right now that they're going to be able to keep up with Georgia. And I think Georgia's defense is definitely going to bear its fangs a little bit more than they did. LSU in that SEC title game, I think that Brian Kelly is a really good game coach. With off the field is a different matter, but that was I think a little bit tighter game than people realize. If LSU hadn't made some mistakes, but I think Georgia's athletes are going to carry the day against Ohio State. The Michigan TCU game, I don't know how TCU is going to deal with Michigan's offensive line. I don't know how
physicality.
Michigan is a physical team, and as much as I enjoyed the give and take in the K-State TCU game, I watched almost the entire thing. I just don't know if TCU physically can hold up for 60 minutes against Jimmy Harbaugh, even without Blake Corum and with them, dealing with some issues. Michigan's a pretty tough ass team, man, and I do think they learned a lot from last year and they're motivated. I think Michigan wins fairly easily, and I think Georgia is going to spank Ohio State.
All right, so you've come around on Michigan, I see.
I have. Part of it is just what they were able to do to Penn State, and the other thing was I was completely surprised to go into Columbus and do that to Ohio State. I think that you can't really make much bigger of a statement, Dave, than you can by doing
that. I know those people. I knew they would turn on Ohio State when given the chance. I know who they are. I sold Coca-Cola to those people.
They already turned on Ryan Day, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, there's hashtag fire Ryan Day out there is immediately out there. And how absurd is that? But I pretty much agree with the way you see this. Texas Christian is a very spunky school.
They are.
They do play Big 12 football, and that's kind of a problem. I think Max Duggan is the X factor in that game. And anyone who saw the Big 12 championship game against Kansas State, I mean, Chris Kleeman's a really good coach, flying completely under the radar, and has gotten that Kansas State team to be very competitive in a short period of time. And I was really kind of surprised that Wisconsin didn't make a run at him, as opposed to the big ticket hire they made, Luke Fickell. But Will Howard, who was their quarterback, was actually pretty good, and he's from Downingtown. He's 2 years older than my son, or 2 years younger than my son Nick. Went to Downingtown West, and he played well. But Max Duggan played so well, and he's the kind of guy who can inspire his team. So, what would you say is the best part of Michigan's team? You said it. It's the offensive line. What's the second best part? I suppose at this point, Donovan Edwards running behind him. And J.J. McCarthy has turned into a pretty good playmaker. But on defense, would you say anything about their defense's standout? Not particularly. They're good and solid. So I give K-State a chance to kind of turn them sideways a little bit with K-State's offense against Michigan's defense, because Max Duggan, man, he's another baller. He's not real fast. He just makes throws, and he was exhausted at the end of that game. So much so that I wonder whether Sonny Dykes. What did you think about the lack of a sneak on 3rd and 18?
Troubling, David. Very troubling.
Yeah,
very,
I mean, this is supposedly an offensive coach, right? The son of Spike Dykes, who we saw in Beaver Stadium in 1995 and turned the place on its head. I don't know what he was thinking. The A gap was free there. I mean, it's Max Dugan's a pretty big kid. Push him in. It's basically the same thing as Sean Clifford. And they decided on a deep handoff from the George Perlis playbook. And let's let all the defenders meet at the running back. I don't get it. They gave the ball to that running back like on the 6-yard line both times. What are you doing?
Yeah,
but if they don't do that, Max Dugan wins that game. And it was a pretty cool performance. He just did whatever was necessary. So I do give them a shot against Michigan that way. I tend to agree with you that Michigan's dominance on the offensive line is something they haven't seen a team like that in the Big 12. I guarantee you. And
you think about Michigan and their. It happened against Penn State. It happened against Ohio State, and it happened against Purdue. Like
you
can hang in there for about 30 minutes, and all of a sudden your defense doesn't have its legs anymore. It's just physically whipped, and all of a sudden you see the big plays, and they make it look easy, and then it's like the other team is paralyzed. And I just wonder if that's what's going to happen with TCU.
I think so. When you go back and look at Michigan in the 3rd quarter, if you rerun the tape and find just the right shot, I've done this a couple of times during the season, once in the Penn State game, once in the Ohio State game. When they get it going like that and the defense is a little bit tired, that offensive line is so good, especially in the interior.
Yeah.
They've got a tremendous center and both guards, and they can open holes that are like textbook, where guys are just they don't even have to slow down. Blake Corum was doing it. Unfortunately, he won't be able to play anymore. But Donovan Edwards is good enough to do it, and they just go careening through these holes at top speed, and that is a huge advantage against TCU's defense. I don't see any problem in that happening. So the other game, I don't think Ohio State's defense has anything close to what they're going to need. And I know Georgia's offense has had some hiccups and problems, and no one still respects Stetson Bennett, but they're a physical team. And I don't think Ohio State has seen anything resembling Georgia in the Big Ten other than Michigan, and we saw what happened there. So, I see a Georgia-Michigan final in L.A.
Dave, it is Army-Navy weekend. I know you're excited about that, but it's also Heisman weekend. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. But before we do that, Dave, LaVar Arrington officially, I think, went into the College Football Hall of Fame. The ceremony was in New York City last night. You covered him. Penn State fans, just about every Penn State fan over the age of, 35 or 40. Is that right? Yeah, that's about right. Loves that guy. What a player. Just your thoughts. I know we talked about it before, but just one of the most physically imposing Penn State players to ever suit up for the blue and white.
Well, at one point he wasn't as good as Aaron Gatton. That's all I can tell.
I knew that was coming.
I ran that by LaVar about a year ago. We called him about the Minnesota game in '97 or '99, and he just laughed and laughed, and then he wasn't laughing. The thing I remember most about LaVar Arrington is that up until that time when he arrived, 97, I guess it was, right?
Yeah, I think that was his true freshman year.
Everything about Penn State was buttoned down, including the mouths of the players. They pretty much did.
Right.
There were a couple of guys here and there. Mark D'Onofrio was notable in that he would kind of say what he wanted, and later on Larry Johnson. But mostly guys kind of towed the line, stayed in their lanes. And LaVar was not trying to be a jerk or anything. He was just going to say what he wanted to say, which I thought was great. It was this giant chromatic personality that Joe couldn't control. and it was fabulous. I mean, you think Joe told him to do the LaVar leap? No, that's not textbook defense. And early on, he had the same kinds of problems as another number 11 we know, where you remember Micah Parsons, early in his career, before he figured it out, he was kind of running all over the place. Mm-hmm. And once LaVar figured out where to be and how to get there and a little more discipline, man, he was a hell of a player. He started the whole number 11 phenomenon, and that's apt because he was a complete departure from everything in Penn State football up to that time, both on and off the field. And that's why people loved him. They loved him the same way they loved Joe Moorhead's offense, because Penn State fans had never seen anything like it. And first they were like shocked, and then they were like, "This is kind of cool. This is okay." That's I think how Penn State fans will remember him.
Yeah. So Navarro Bowman, late in his career, switched to number 11, a kid from Maryland. Obviously Micah, and now Abdul Carter is another one that is showing signs of being LaVar-like. We'll see, but big kid who can run, nasty hitter, just a true freshman. So if you wear number 11 at Penn State, there's really only one reason why, and it's in honor of the original number 11. So
we should do research on who wore number 11 like before LaVar.
Brent Wilkerson was number 11 as a tight end. Daniel George was a wideout. It's not.
I always wanted to get a number 33 Celtics jersey with Kuberski on the back of it. Wouldn't that be hilarious?
Yeah. Somebody out there is going to say, you know what? He wasn't the original number 11. I was 1968.
Steve Kuberski was the number 33 with the Celtics before Larry Bird. And that's worthless knowledge that's stuck in my head. Okay, go ahead.
Dave, let's just wrap it up. I know you have a big day ahead of you, I believe. You might be covering some hoops. I'm not sure.
Yep, going up to State College for the Hoop Knits against struggling Michigan State team, yes.
Let's just end with this then. Just your thoughts overall, just about this year's Heisman race. I know we don't have to go into details, but they announced the 4 finalists. I think they were all quarterbacks. Surprised you at all? It surprised me. I thought there were some other deserving players, but that's just the way it goes.
Well, I honestly can expose all 3 of my votes because none of them are finalists. It won't enter into the results. So I don't think that really makes any difference because it's not going to.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not. Yeah, I mean, right? It's not going to illustrate anything about.
I know one. I can almost guarantee you. I know one of the guys you voted for because I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. I thought he was he could have arguably been the most impressive player in the country this year.
All right, my number 1 was Hendon Hooker, even though he got hurt.
Yeah,
because Tennessee does not do what Tennessee does without him. They certainly don't beat Alabama. And I know he got hurt 2 games before the end of the season, but I don't care. Terrific stats, terrific impact as a player. And he had a terrific season. And I mean, all the people who voted for Caleb Williams, it's like they must not have seen the Pac-12 championship game. I was ready to vote for him, but do you really want to start painting F Utah on your fingernails before that? Did you hear about that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, he put FU, you can imagine, and then Utah on his fingernails, and then showed everyone. Good idea. And he got abused in that game. He got bounced around once he became immobile. I mean, that just kind of soured me on him completely. I ended up leaving him off my ballot, even though he had an incredible year, and I watched a lot of Pac-12. So Hendon Hooker, and then, as you probably surmised, Mohammed Ibrahim was my number 2. I just thought he was tremendous and the absolute backbone of Minnesota all year. They were playing 2 quarterbacks, an ordinary defense, not a great offensive line. And he just kept churning out 100 yards, ended up with 1,600 yards.
Yeah.
I just think he's a tremendous, tremendous college player. I don't know if he translates to the NFL because he didn't really have a burst. And then I put Bryce Young third because I think Bryce Young is still, honestly, kind of like LeBron in the NBA, the best player in college football. He might not have had a tremendous statistical year because he has, by Alabama standards, ordinary receivers this year, guys who drop some balls. But I still think, honestly, he's the best player in the game. So that's who I voted for and why. Yeah,
it's weird that it seems like CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, a lot of the quarterbacks now, it's what you alluded to. It's tough to transition them to the NFL because they're kind of short, and whatever they're listed at, they're shorter than that. And it's getting, people see what happened with Baker Mayfield and his career. It looks like it's essentially over, but short quarterbacks in the NFL, if they're not like super athletic, even Kyler Murray, who is super athletic, there are issues there, whether they can't see over the line of scrimmage or they just really don't seem like they really have a love for the game. So right. I don't know where it's going with college quarterbacks to the NFL. I knew you liked Mo a lot, and I have no problem with that. I just couldn't. Number 2 for Michigan, I thought had a hell of a year. I know he has a great offensive line, but
you could have gone with either Chase Brown or Blake Corum.
Yeah, he is. I just think that the year that number 2 had was pretty special, and I was disappointed that it was 4 quarterbacks.
Yeah,
going to the ceremony. I think there's a lot more really, really good players in the country than just the guys, at the controls of an offense that's really not. You're not really allowed to do much on defense anymore. So I'm not saying it's not hard to be a quarterback, but it's a lot harder to do some things well at other positions. And it's a shame that some people get overlooked.
Yeah, and the reason I didn't put either Caleb Williams or C.J. Stroud on my ballot ultimately is that Stroud was thrown from an easy chair all year against kind of substandard defenses. Yep. They didn't play a great schedule. No one tested him except for Notre Dame and Michigan. And what did he do against those 2 teams? Not a lot.
Right.
He had everything in his power. Incredible wideouts, even without Jackson Smith and Jigba, and a great protection. And when he didn't have it, what did he do? Not a great performance in those 2 games. And Caleb Williams playing against what I think are substandard defenses just across the board all year in the Pac-12. So that's why.
Dave, real quick, another player I considered, how much better would Marvin Harrison make any quarterback in the country? Any quarterback in the country.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, and this guy was not playing, remember, he didn't until last year's Rose Bowl.
He didn't drop a pass all year. How about that?
Big, physical, fast, high points balls. What else?
He's another guy that I'm like, how do you not look at what he did this year? I mean, and he made some contested catches, and I'm telling you, he's a guy. I know. I don't think he's your typical college receiver. I know there's a lot of guys with a lot of yards, but he's a different breed, I think, of wideout.
Yeah, I mean, he could end up with a career like if Chris Godwin's kind of gotten hurt a little bit in the NFL.
Yeah, he's had 2 pretty significant knee injuries. He's finally back now at Penn, but I mean, you just wonder. I think he had one before he got to Penn State too. You just wonder if how much that's going to take away from the back end of his career.
Any big wideout that takes hits like that is vulnerable to having their career a little bit derailed. But if that doesn't happen to Marvin Harrison, just look out because he's a prototype, isn't he, for the NFL, who can make catches anywhere in the field.
Davo, I want you to enjoy your basketball time up at State College today. We will talk again next week, and hopefully we'll have some more news about the Army-Navy game, the Heisman Trophy winner, and Penn State football. And
Kaiser knows the podcast is over.
Is Kaiser going to State College?
He is not.
Oh, he's kind of like your he could be your comfort assistance dog or whatever it is. You might need him courtside.
Oh, what do you call those? I can't remember what you call them. Emotional support dogs.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not trying to make fun of those dogs, but I mean, I know he makes you feel a lot better. So I need
an emotional support dog in my older age. All right, I'll see you next week.